Glory to Jesus Christ, and welcome back to the podcast. Today's guest is Stephanie, a Native American woman with an incredible and unique testimony to share. Stephanie grew up being initiated into a secret Native American religious society. Her story is filled with supernatural experiences, including everything from astral projection to remote viewing and demonic oppression. Like all guests on this podcast, though, her story leads her to placing her faith in one person who would change her life forever: Jesus Christ. I pray her story brings you closer to Him, the Jesus of the Bible, who is the way, the truth, and the life. So thank you for listening and enjoy the podcast. So, Stephanie, I want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast today and being willing to share more about your story. You've got a really incredible story, and I've been looking forward to discussing it with you. But the first question that I always like to ask people is, did you grow up in a Christian home? Because I just find it kind of gives context to our
Mm.
discussion. So could you tell us a little bit about your early life?
My early life, I have never grown up in a Christian home. None of my family members. I grew up with my mom and dad until I was about 8, and then they divorced. And then I was sent to go live with my grandparents on my father's side, and they were not Christian either. And as far as I know, I've been asking around, like if anybody was baptized. Yes, my grandparents were baptized, but that was during the Indian boarding school days when they were forced to be baptized and forced to convert to Catholic. And but other than that, like I'm the very first Christian in my whole entire bloodline.
That is incredible. So yeah, maybe you could tell people a little bit about like your family history and stuff like that. Yeah, what was your sort of spiritual worldview growing up as a young person?
Okay, so I am Native American from New Mexico, and I never grew up knowing Jesus or of him. We have God the Creator. We have Father Son, which is the star. It's not like the Son Jesus. um, we have many gods. It's a polytheist religion. So we have the moon goddess, we have Mother Earth, which is divination. We have tons of different Kiva fraternities, and these are secret societies. And technically, only men are initiated into these societies from a really young age. There is very rare to have a female initiated into these societies, but I was initiated into the society because I had it's equivalent to a near death experience, but I was pulled into a portal when I was 16 years old. And I it was a it was a traumatic experience for me. And the way that it happened, it ended up taking me underneath the ground, under the earth. And I tried to kick and scream, and I realized that I couldn't speak. But whatever this thing that was taking me, I felt its hands, and I felt that it was a man's hands because the how big the hands were, and my hand brushed against its knuckles. And the more that I kicked, it stopped. And then it brought me back up above the earth, and it took me back into the my kitchen of my parents' their house. And I got up and I ran to my bedroom, and I went to open the door, and my whole entire hand went through the door, and I woke up. But when it took me out of my room and through the bedroom door, I thought I was going to hit my head. And so I kind of flinched and winced, but we went through. But when we went through my parents' bedroom, which was facing east, that's when I saw my parents sleeping. So when I woke up and I actually went into the room physically, I saw them exactly how I saw them in the spirit before this thing took me underneath the earth. And I woke up my mom, and I told her that something was bothering me, and that that I needed help. And she was like, "You're just having a nightmare. Just come sleep next to me." So she scooted over, and I laid down, and it tried to pick me up again. And I screamed and I kicked. And then next thing you know, she woke up, and she was trying to calm me down. And then my stepdad, he screamed out loud. Then he said something bit him. And then we turned on the light, and there was a set of human teeth on his thigh, yeah, where this thing bit him. So that's the whole reason why I got initiated into the secret fraternity. Um, so I'm missing a lot of time in my childhood, and during that time, and I've been slowly getting those memories back. But I do remember going to all these sacred sites around the reservation, learning how to pray, chanting prayers and stuff. And so it was I think it was a 4-day initiation. But I was supposed to stay, and I was supposed to keep, keeping up with my religious duties. And I was like going to the kiva, and I was supposed to feed these kachina dolls and stuff like that. Not the dolls, the gods. And but I went back to my parents' house, and I by that time I was well aware of the spiritual side because I had been seeing it my whole entire life since I was a kid. And that's what our whole tribe understands, that there is a spiritual world. Um, we're not we're taught everything about the spiritual world as soon as we can learn to speak and comprehend and stuff like that. So it's nothing new. It's just kind of when we're off the reservation that we understand that people don't really have a good understanding of the spiritual world and stuff like that. But definitely, if you go to any reservation, it is you can feel the oppression because of all the stuff that's been going on. And yeah, so it's kind of difficult to kind of piece together exactly what happened from childhood until my initiation. But I know there was a lot of, with family members, there was a lot of suicide attempts. There was a lot of adultery. There was a lot of partying and stuff like that. So growing up as a child, you see the adults acting like this. So you're kind of like, it's okay to sit down as like an 8-year-old and learn how to play quarters with little shots of Dr. Pepper and stuff like that. That was me growing up. And that was with my uncles and stuff, and watching uncles try to like unalive themselves with like butcher knives or guns and stuff, and watching other adults trying to like fight and pull these things away from so they won't hurt themselves. Um, and the constant parties, the constant concerts, because that's the number one thing that everybody loves to do. Is like take your kids to the concert, and while you get drunk and all these little kids are watching your parents do all this crazy stuff, you know what I mean? So that's um so when I eventually moved to my grandfather's house, he was a rancher. That's what I ended up doing. So from like 8 to 16 years old, I was sent to the ranch, which was like 40 minutes away from the reservation. He had like 400 head of sheep that we had to take care of. So any kind of off time breaks that I had, I went from like super chill with mom and the family and watching parties to like super strict, where I was always working, learning how to be a mechanic, herding sheep. And by the time I was 12 years old, my dad, he would send me and my dad, he would send me and my brother to the ranch. By then I had like I already knew like where to take the sheep and how to herd them and stuff like that. So he would fill, we had like this little Airstreamer trailer, and he would fill our propane tanks up and make sure that we had enough for the week. He would pack the fridge with enough food for the week. He would charge the batteries for the trailer, so we had like lights at night and stuff like that. And he would he would give us a rifle, and because we had like coyotes and stuff like that, and he'd give us like box of ammo, and he said, all right, there you go, don't lose the sheep, and I'll be back in a week. And he would leave. So we had to herd sheep. The nearest neighbor was probably about 15 miles away at that time. So it was like out in the middle of basically nowhere. But it was good times because I passed my times reading. I'm such a huge, book nerd and stuff like that. So I would always take like tons of magazines or whatever books I could find, and I would just spend like our downtime whenever the sheep are sleeping or napping and stuff like that, and I would read books. But that was that was a lot of my time spent on the ranch. So my family didn't have a lot of money, so I grew up on food stamps, welfare, hand-me-down clothes, government cheese at the time. So I had to get used to eating powdered eggs, and that was I still hate it. I see it and I'm like, let me see if it tastes any different. I'm like, oh no, it still sucks. So let's see. So yeah, learning how to herd sheep and take care of my brother. And I was the oldest cousin. So whoever wanted to come to the ranch, I had to take care of them. And of course, the younger cousins, first time at the ranch, spending the night, and it's just all three of us. And they're kind of like, we got to go back. We got to go back because, we're going to get lost. I'm like, don't worry, they're going to come back. So I kind of had to like learn how to calm, the kids down and stuff like that. But it was a big responsibility at the time for me because I was just a kid taking care of kids, trying to not lose sheep and stuff like that. But we have tons of good memories. And then during those times, there was a lot of supernatural stuff happening, meaning paranormal stuff. And so we have like a lot of, on the reservation, we have a lot of stories about apparitions and shapeshifters and UFOs is another one, and cattle mutilations. My parents had a few cattle mutilations on their ranch, and so the youngest that I can remember seeing uh, something paranormal, I think I was 8 or 9 years old. But that was traumatic because not only did I see it, but everybody saw it, and it actually manifested in the physical, this thing, whatever it was. And my dad shot it in the chest with a shotgun, and it fell backwards, and it popped back up, and it ran off. So it's like crazy stuff like that happens all the time on the reservation. Um, so it's like I said, it's not far-fetched to talk about things like that on the reservation. It happens all the time. Everybody has their own stories. And sometimes it turns into like let's see who can have the scariest supernatural story. um, yeah, so let's see, from 8 to 16 that happened, and then my grandmother passed away uh, in front of me. So then I had to go to my mom's house, and I went to three high schools total. The second high school I went to was with my mom, and then the third high school I went to, it was kind of like moving to my aunt's house in another city. And by that time, I had just given up, and I was like, because I was on an honor roll in my second high school, and I was on National Honor Society. I was doing so good. I had like straight A's and stuff. And then I had to move to a third high school, and it was not by choice. So I was pretty much like bah humbug, kicking rocks and stuff. And then I started being rebellious, and then I started ditching school, and then I ended up after graduation. That was my senior year, and after graduation, that's when I just went crazy. And because by then I was like, I've been bounced around from family to family to family, and um, my the adults in my life that were family, they were not my parents, but more like my extended family, my aunts and uncles. They were the ones that where I experienced the brunt of the abuse. But like I said, I had forgiven everybody. I don't wish anybody any harm or any kind of negative feelings towards them. I do wish that they do repent, and that they just know that I still love them, because I really do. And because they weren't always bad to me, which is the thing that hurts the most, is that they weren't always bad, but when they were bad, it hurt. And the one thing that I wished the most was that I just wish that all of it was physical, because the verbal was the one that cut the most, because it's like you can't heal. as quick as the physical, if that makes sense. um, yeah, so my dad was the one that was physical with me, and he was a kickboxer, and he was a jack of all trades. We used to call him that because he was like a heavy equipment loader. He was a truck driver. He was a security guard and all that stuff, but he also used to compete in kickboxing, and he used to win tournaments and stuff. And when he drank, he was a mean drunk. It was like a switch, and it was like you would look at him one way, and it was like he was ready to fight. He didn't care like who it was, if it was a female or if it was a guy. But um, there was lots of times when I started. He always tried to like take me out and say, "Hey, we're gonna go to the ranch and we're gonna go fix this transmission." So I was like his little right hand man because I was so interested in motors and stuff like that. Um, So we would do that, and then afterwards he's like, "Hey, let's go to the stagecoach and get you a burger." Okay. And then he's like, "Hey, let's stop by." As soon as he said, "Let's stop by," because the bars back then they had drive-through windows. So we would go through a drive-through window, and as soon as he gets beer, I'm like, "Oh no, I'm only 13. I can't drive. I'm stuck with him." And it was like the more drunk he got, like the scarier he got, and it usually ended up with him backhanding me or busting my lip or chipping my tooth or whoever we were with at the time was like my cousins and stuff. He would end up doing a roundhouse kick and it beating them up and stuff like that. It was bad, and there was times where I see cops come into the house, and it took like it took six of them just to hog tie him and put him in the back of a cop car. And then he ended up kicking out the window of the cop car. I mean, he was crazy strong. Um, so most of my childhood was taking clean change of clothes and visit him in the jailhouse, talking to him through the window and stuff, and going to the ranch and stuff like that. So that's kind of like how I grew up. And not, yeah, so none of the growing up in a Christian home was not even on the radar. I didn't even hear the first words of "I love you" until I was about 22 years old. Um, so when I joined the Navy, I left. Let me backtrack a little bit. Graduated high school, started right before I graduated high school, actually. I just took off. I left home and I was kind of homeless. I was couch surfing and I was partying with people. And then I started running around with like this little wannabe gang and stuff like that. And I was supposed to join the gang, and the guys were like, "Do you want to get beaten or sexton?" I was like, "What does that mean?" So I know what means or meant, and but I didn't know what the other one meant. So they're like, "Just stay here a little longer and we'll show you." And I was like, "All right." So they did. They got these two girls so drunk, and then they ran a train on her. And I was like, I don't want that. They're like, well, you're gonna get beaten. And I was like, okay. The night I was supposed to get beaten, because it was like they said we were gonna have like the party like that next weekend, which was gonna be my birthday. I ended up getting put in jail for DWI. So so I look back on it now and I was like, I think that God might have had something to do with that because I definitely did sober up in jail. I wasn't able to get beaten, and all these little game bangers that I had such allegiance to and was so loyal to, nobody visited me in jail. They knew I was in jail. Nobody ever came. Nobody ever came, and I was there for like 6 months to pay off my debt because at that time getting a DWI was like 10 grand. I didn't have that money. So they're like, you got to do community service or you can just sit in jail and pay it off that way. So I chose to sit in jail and I got chewed out by all the older women because I was a baby in jail. I just turned 18 and these ladies were like 40 years old and they're chewing me out. They're saying, "What are you doing? You know, this is how you're gonna start your life." So it was like a it was like one of those episodes of being scared straight, but it was for real. So my dad finally found out that I was in jail, and he went to go see me, and he said, that's it. He's like, you're going down a really bad path. He said, I know I'm not the best father, but you're gonna get out of here. So he made me join the Navy. I didn't want to, but he made me, and I'm thank God that he did. My father has passed away in 2017, and as crappy as he was when he was drunk, he was a really good dad. Like he always took the time out to like teach us stuff, and everything that he taught me was on the exam for the ASVAB, which was crazy. I was like he had just taught me some stuff about transmissions and stuff like that, and it was on the ASVAB test, and I was like, oh my gosh, I was like, that is so cool. So when I joined the Navy, I became an aircraft mechanic, and that's how that career started. So I joined in 96, and December of 96, and I retired in 2015. No, 2012, I'm sorry. Yeah, 2012. But during that time, I had made really good friends with Christian people. And I swear, listening to them talk about how they grew up and how mom and dad are like, "Oh, I love you, and let's do this." And I was like, "What?" It's like it sounds like a Hallmark movie. I'm like, "What? This is so great!" I'm like, I was like blown away that people grew up like this. I was like, it was like a movie, and I was like, and they're like, "Tell me how you grew up," and I was like, it's okay, but I was like so hungry to hear like something positive like this really happened in real life. So, and then they were always like inviting me to church, and I was like, what's so good about Jesus? Like, tell me about him. Because, like I said, I grew up in my Native American religion, and there's no Jesus around. There is God, the creator. There's all these little Kachina gods and stuff like that, but no Jesus. So, when they're like, oh, he's God, he's love, he's full of grace, he's going to be so good to you. And I was like, you make him sound like a hippie. So, and I had no clue. And then so I was like, well, tell me, I was like, well, tell me how he's good. Like, and I had like genuine questions, but um, like I said, they had never experienced anything that I had, like as far as the abuse and the poverty and the night terrors and getting pulled into the portal and getting initiated into these secret fraternities and just
Can you tell us more about that on the secret fraternity side of things? Because I think for the listeners, they don't really understand. You use the word, I think it started with K. Um,
The Kiva
yeah, I've
or
never even
Kachinas.
yeah, I've never even heard of these things. Would you mind just explaining that a little bit, just so we can understand what life was like before Jesus for you? Um,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sorry, I'm so ignorant
So
of that kind of stuff. I've never heard anybody with your story. So if you're comfortable like explaining like what did it mean to be initiated? What were you thinking when it happened? Like what did like being a part of it even look like for you? Because I think people have never really heard like it might be normal to you, but for a lot of people,
mm,
this is so not unusual in a bad way, but it's just foreign, you know. But being in Australia, we haven't heard of any of these terms.
oh wow. Okay. Yeah, know your audience, right? So, Kachinas, what it they are they have these masks that they don. And what they do is they represent different. There's like I said, there's so many, and it goes back all the way to the origin stories of creation, or like after the flood and stuff like that. We even have like a plumed serpent, which is oh, I know the plume serpent. There's is similar to Quetzalcoatl with the Mayans and the Aztecs. There's also another plume serpent that's similar to ours. There's three tribes in New Mexico total that have these plume serpents like Quetzalcoatl. So if you know the history with Quetzalcoatl, where it I read a book because I was so curious because of how similar these serpents were. So I read The Conquest and Discover no, the Discovery and the Conquest of Mexico by Bernal de Castillo. And this was a conquistador from Spain, and they were coming through, spreading the gospel and stuff like that. But he came across when Montezuma was reigning at that time. And at that time in Spain, I believe it was King Charles I. And this is like in the 1500s. So they come through and they come across Montezuma and what the pyramids, the ziggurats and all that stuff. And they saw all these the priests, they came out. And I mean, this book is like descriptive because it's his biography, and it talks about like how the priests were coming out of the ziggurats, and their dreads and their hair was like clotted in blood, and how they required a human sacrifice to Quetzalcoatl because he needed that human blood. So human sacrifice is not uncommon in our folklore or our history, because we have stories of human sacrifices and stuff like that also, and cannibalism, which is the same during that time. So I was just like intrigued to see the similarities were the same, the characteristics were the same of the serpents and stuff like that. So back then, um, even before I was born, they used to have like a mask or like a deity of a false idol of this serpent, where they would like parade through town and stuff, and they would recreate the dance and stuff like of what it would have done. And so that's what it is. And there's like tons of other I guess you can call them demigods, because they were like not full human. They were half god, half human and stuff like that. And but with the people today, when you're initiated into this fraternity, you represent this demigod. You get a special mask to wear during these like ceremonies and rituals. But in order to get initiated, you have to go through certain, it's like a 4-day initiation. And I'm not going to go into depth with it because it's like not many people are going to understand. And I mean, but yeah, you do either get initiated as a child sometimes, and even as a teenager. And with females, it's usually like with what happened to me, because I had gone into the afterlife. Um, it's equivalent to a near death experience, but it was more on the demonic side. And anytime that I was sick or I wasn't feeling good, or if I would see something paranormal and I would tell somebody, like one of my elders, they would try to call like a medicine man, and they say, you need to see a medicine man, because a medicine man was supposed to heal you. He's supposed to be the healer and ward these evil spirits away. So they would do that, but it never, sometimes it was like a little band-aid, where it was like it would ease the whatever I was feeling at the time, which was getting demonically tortured. I was getting demonically essayed. And it was it was like the most fear that anybody can ever experience in their entire life. And not possessed, but definitely terrorized. So whenever that happened, they would say, well, you need to see a medicine man, and they're going to look over you. So they can look through their little crystals, they burn their little sage, they have you like look into the fire and look at coals, and you have to like pick out certain things that you see. But none of it helped, because not even like 2 weeks later, I would get the attacks were even worse. I went to a sweat lodge, and that didn't help either. So my parents took me to another tribe. I went to that medicine man. That wasn't helping my night terrors either. It made it worse. So now that I know that they were packing like all these entities onto me, and because you don't know what these medicine men are operating in, and I just thought that it was kind of unfair that my family had to scrape money, because usually to get these medicine men to come to your house, they would have to pay like $200 to $300, sometimes $400. And not only that, but we would feed them, give them gifts and stuff like that. And so it was just like a like I said, if you're doing this for money, then you're just gonna say, "Oh yeah, she's kind of fixed." And I don't know like the language of these different medicine men because they're from different tribes, and I don't know what their prayers are actually saying and stuff like that. So eventually, I just stopped asking. I stopped asking for help because I was like, I would rather see these things and not let them bother me. Yes, I can see these apparitions. Yes, I can see the paranormal, but I don't need to tell anybody because I don't want to see medicine man. I would wait until like a year later and be like, "Hey mom, I saw this over here and da da da." And she's like, "Why did you tell me?" I was like, "I could have taken you to medicine man." I was like, "That's why I didn't want to tell you." So I waited. And finally, when I saw an old man walking backwards into one of the houses next door. I didn't say nothing, but I was like, okay. And I went to Afghanistan like a month later. I was like, I'm not saying anything what I saw. And yeah, so it was just, I'm not saying I'm a seer because it's whatever counterfeit I had. I was able to see that stuff when I was operating with the dark kingdom. But now that Jesus had delivered me, it's like there's no reason to have those gifts.
That's incredible. So,
I
so even the people around you recognize that you had something special going on, even though it wasn't good at the time, obviously, because you were engaging with like demonic entities that were doing really destructive things in your life. But it sounds incredible because like if you said that here in Australia, people would think you're going crazy. But growing up, people just were so aware that the supernatural realm is real in your community that people just thought you needed to be I guess in a special role within within the society
Mm,
because this
yes.
was happening to you. It's just so interesting to me the way that we look at things so differently in the West. Um, and so I'm really glad you explained all of that because I think people are going to be really interested to know just that cultures all around the world know this stuff is real. You know, you're not
Hmm.
crazy. And yeah, thank you so much for sharing about that. Yeah, I was sorry to cut you off, but I there were a few terms I didn't understand, and I thought maybe a lot of my audience would also appreciate an explanation. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. So that was let's see. So yeah, the medicine men operate by using crystals, medicine bags, and inside these medicine bags, like after they make sure that you're healed or whatever, they'll give you these little medicine pouches. They'll call them power packs sometimes, but it has like little trinkets in there, like maybe an arrowhead or like a carving of a bear that they carved out of turquoise or stone. And they'll fill it up with cornmeal. And that's a significant thing because corn is such a highly valued commodity in the Native American community because that's part of our origin stories is that corn is so precious. So it'll be ground up into cornmeal with bits of turquoise mixed in it and put in this bag, and that's supposed to protect you and ward off all the spirits. Then they'll have you like wear this arrowhead and they'll bless it. And there's also like different herbs and powders and stuff that you're supposed to. I mean, it's just all kinds of stuff, and none of it ever helped. None of it did. It just made everything worse. It just kept all these spiritual doors open for the demonic to come in. Sometimes they're disguised as your spirit guides, which are familiar spirits. Sometimes they're disguised as like your space brothers, which are also demons. But nobody ever questioned it. But I've always questioned, like, why is this always happening? Like, but I was always getting in trouble when I was a kid because I was always like, why? Like, why do I have to stay inside this house, and cook and clean? Why can't I go out with the guys and, do the guy stuff, because in my tribe, it's a very like the men chores and the women chores are very split up. So I was such a tomboy growing up, so I always wanted to go out there and be with the boys and stuff and see what they're doing. And they're like, nope, you're a girl, you got to go inside and make bread and learn how to cook. And I'm like, that's why I was like an aircraft mechanic, you know. Um, Plus I was good at it, I loved it. So these let's see, where were we at?
It's interesting. You were actually just talking about the time where you joined the Navy, I think, before I interrupted you and asked you
Oh,
to
yeah.
for the clarifying question. So yeah, maybe take us through that. So what did it look like for you? You were going down kind of a dark path before you joined the Navy. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, that is
Yeah.
fair to say. Yeah, so I definitely was going down a dark path because when I joined the Navy, I was already a full-blown alcoholic. The Navy doesn't help because the
Mm.
Navy's all party, so but the only reason why I was an alcoholic, well, my dad had me take my first beer at the age of 10. My uncles and my cousins let me sip some peppermint schnapps, smoke some weed. It was just like things that you shouldn't be doing with kids, but because the mind is so blinded while you're doing all this stuff and clouded, your judgment's clouded and stuff. You just don't care. You just want to be like your child's best friend. Parents should not do that at all. So joining the Navy, it was definitely hard for me to be sober. It was easy for me to drink, and the only reason why I drank in the first place, before I joined the Navy, was because I had all these demonic terrors, nightmares, um, just getting completely assaulted sexually. And the only way that I could stop it in my own doing, well, the only way I knew was to drink and black out and not remember. And that was the whole reason why I drank so much. And um, so I had come across like really, really good mentors in the Navy, and they helped me stop drinking because I already had like alcohol related incidences in the Navy when I first joined. I was like a wreck. I was a party girl and everybody called me Trouble. And I always hated that nickname, but I always, hey, here comes trouble, here comes trouble. And I was like, why does everybody call me Trouble? And they're like, so they helped me um wean myself off. They helped me through that whole process of not drinking. Then I went like the opposite direction. Now I went into like extreme fitness. So now it's like, okay, I got to hurry up and like get off work, and then I'll go to the gym for 2 hours. I'll run like 5 miles. I ran like 4 marathons. So, and I've done like tons of CrossFit workouts and tournaments and stuff like that. So I was like super, super extreme, but I was doing it so I could sleep through the night and not remember it, where I would be so exhausted. So that was a totally opposite direction. It was just like an unhealthy balance. There was no balance. It was like go hard or go home kind of attitude. And then it was like then I started during my Navy years, I started to realize and document and journal a lot of my nightmares. And what I noticed was that there's a shift, like right when you're going to go into sleep paralysis, there's a shift that happens. It's either a white noise that just comes into your ear and just completely hurts, or else it's like a vibration, like an earthquake, and then your spirit leaves your body. And and at first I was like, was there an earthquake? Because I was in Washington State. I was stationed there at the time, and I was like, there can't be an earthquake there. And then I would wake up, and after my astral projection sleep state that I was in, I would ask my roommate if there was a earthquake, and she's like, no. And I was like, that is so strange. And then so that's when I started noticing that I call it a dimension shift. And every time that because I had the astral projection started when I was a kid too. But when it first happened, it was like my spirit got pulled out. I saw um I saw the silver cord coming from my belly button, and I looked down and I saw my physical body attached to it. And it was strange. But when I was able to go out of the roof of the house and down a canyon towards like the next town, there was a bunch of lights. It was so quiet. There was nothing scary about it. But the further I flew away, the thinner that cord got, the silver cord to my belly button. So I got scared. I was like, there was a knowing that even when I was a kid back then, that I don't want to go too far because it's gonna cut and I might die. So I would go back to my body. then the next day, like not on my own, it would happen again. And it would take me a little into like a different direction. And then that silver cord was still attached. But as I got older, these astral projections, it was like actually me getting yanked out of my body, and there was no silver cord. But then this time it was like I was being operated. So my astral projections was like very chaotic. And it was like I would fly up super high. And the only reason why I knew that it was in current time was because there was power lines and I was always trying to dodge it. So I was like, I would fly up super high, and then I go too far high in the sky, my stomach will flip. And then I'm like, oh my God, I'm going outer space. I'm going too high above the clouds. And then it would come my body would come crashing down to the ground. And then I wake up and I was like, and those were the ones where I was like, what in the world? Like, why am I even dreaming? I thought it was a nightmare at first. Like, and then as I got older, when I was in the Navy, then I started noticing that it was happening a lot more frequently. So, but only this time it was a dog man that was chasing me at the time. And after a while, it felt like I was being used as a bait to make it run somewhere, because it was like I had zero control of where I was going. I had zero control of how high I could fly or how low it would go. And then the dog man changed into it was a different cryptid every time. It was a vampire sometimes. Other times it was just things that I have no idea what they were. But it was always like that fear that it was trying to catch me. And so that's the because of that, it was the drinking increased. Um, so okay, so being chased by dogmen and all that stuff and seeing the rituals. Yeah. And then now it's not only was I being demonically abused, I should say, now I was being gifted pretty bracelets. And it was I can't even it was like a 5 rows of seashells with gems wrapped around them and stuff. I mean, it was gorgeous and it was given to me. And always in the spirit, it was always like I could see these things, but I couldn't. It felt so familiar. Like if I could only see the face, I would know who this person is. And that's how it always was. Like the person that's torturing me, the person that's terrorizing me, and it was always so familiar. But I could never, ever, ever see the face. It was just like that feeling of like I know this person, but I don't know who it is. And then I was gifted some rings. I was given some food to eat. And in our native tradition, it's like we're taught from a very young age, like if you dream of the dead, you don't take anything from them. Like you don't, they try to offer you food, you say no. They try to offer you drinks, you say no. So I always had that in the back of my mind. So now I'm like a couple years away from retiring and stuff, and I already had like 10 deployments under my belt, and these things were feeding me like food. And I was like, but it came like as like a huge party, like everybody's here, we're celebrating, blah blah blah. And everybody drank. And it was I find out later that this is a binding contract, that it's you're making a covenant with with these things, as spirit spouses. Because every relationship that I had been involved in, it was always like um, there was always something wrong with them. It was like they could be the most faithful, the perfect person and stuff like that, but I will always find something wrong with them. And it's like, you're too perfect. I can't be with you. Gotta go. And it was so easy for me to just leave the person and not look back, not think twice and stuff. So I know I broke a lot of people's I, I wouldn't say hearts. I would say I shattered their souls, because it was like I had manipulated them, and I knew I was doing it for my own greed, um, for myself. And uh, the hardest thing for me to do, well, not only on this forgiveness walk, but I had to call them and for ask for forgiveness. And that was so hard. So hard. Um, but like I said, now we're going into towards the retirement, and I go to Afghanistan as a civilian contractor, and I was there for 13 months. And that's when I started realizing that I could remote view. And I don't know how I did it. I don't know why it was shown to me that it was done, but remote viewing and astral projection are two different things, because astral projection is like you're in another dimension, another realm. Because I don't know if you've seen the movie Stranger Things or the Netflix series Stranger Things, but the upside down, that's what it looks like. When you're remote viewing, you're actually seeing things on the earthly realm in real time. So I saw some people that I knew. I was in northern Afghanistan. They were in southern Afghanistan, 3,000 miles away. And I saw exactly what these people were doing. And I called them on the phone and they're like, I was like, what were you doing? And I told them exactly what they did. And they're like, what? They're like, how did you know? Like, we were inside the building and it was like nobody was around. But it was stuff like that. And then I realized that some of these nightmares that I was feeling, seeing and feeling, were actually not me, where I was actually body jumping into other people. And then there was another dream where I was riding a dirt bike and I went and I saw like this dead horse, and it was like on the side of the road, and it was a big old huge gash that was open. I saw the ribs, I smelled the flies. And that's another thing, that's that your senses work when you're astral projecting, and also when you're body jumping, you can smell what's around the environment. And I smelled death. So then I went to the house and I actually went to go get my relative and come back. And then when one of my relatives, they came to my house and they read my dream journal and they said, tell me about this. And it was about me seeing a dead horse. And I explained the whole thing. And come to find out, I body jumped into her. And then so I called my other relative and he confirmed it. He goes, that was me that went to go see it.
Okay, so you're having these supernatural experiences. You're in the Navy at this point. You're experiencing remote viewing, which is actually a real thing that like the government has even investigated and everything like that. Like
Mm-hmm.
remote viewing is a real thing. It's really kind of interesting to get into, and it proves the supernatural realm. Um, what ends up leading you towards even considering Christianity? Like at this point, you know the supernatural realm is real. You've had all these
Mm-hmm.
intense experiences, even from childhood. Um, what kind of leads you to even begin to think about Christianity?
Well, my my neighbor would always come to my house. And this is like I said, I've been retired in to 2012, got back from Afghan in 2013. So we moved to like a new neighborhood, and my neighbor would come across, and I love her to death, but she would come and she would try to preach the gospel. And still being like in my Native American religion and all this other stuff, and still going to these ceremonies and stuff like that, still seeing medicine men. And she's like, she was quoting scriptures and she was getting, I was getting mad because I was like, after she would leave, I'm like, why am I getting mad at her? All she was doing was just trying to show me what the Bible was. And then, but she didn't give up. She kept, she tried for 6 years to finally like break through. And finally I got so upset at her because I was like, you know, you keep talking to me about the God, about your God and your Bible, and what can he do for me? Like I'm still having all these dreams, I'm still being terrorized and all this other stuff. And I went through like 8 years of therapy, and like before the Navy and after the Navy, 8 years total consistently, and I'm still having these night terrors. I went through like took all these like uh antidepressant medicine and nothing's helped. And then I'm still struggling with alcohol at this point. And I said, what can your God do for me? All that your big God, who is he? And I was like, what can your God do? I was so pissed. So she didn't say anything. She said, have a blessed day. And she went across the street. And literally that night, no, was it that night? Was 2 weeks later? I think it was a couple weeks later. I had another sleep paralysis attack, and this thing, mine was a shadow man, by the way. And uh, so he's been terrorizing me since I was a kid. My brother's was a hat man, kind of looks like Freddy Krueger. So my shadow man came and he's like sitting on top of me and getting ready to, terrorize me and torture me. But that night, it was my I was sleeping with my youngest because he was sick, and I was holding him, and we ended up falling asleep on the bed. But during this sleep paralysis attack, I saw like a girl on the other side of the bed, and she was like there. I could see like through a window, and it was like a lab, and she was screaming, and she was like pounding on the door because there's a like a medical door on the other side of the bed where the window should have been. And she's screaming and she's pounding and she's screaming, help, help, wake up, you have to help me, help me. And then something came and pulled her down and she was screaming. Then she got dragged away. And then I looked and there was like little, like I was in a hospital. But then when I look forward, I see like the shadow man coming. And then I try to grab it because it looked at my son. And the when its attention went to me and shifted over to my son, like my fear turned to anger, and I tried everything I could to fight it. So I felt its where its arms were, and I grabbed it with both of mine, and I held on so tight, and the whole time I'm like screaming, I'm like, somebody help me. And this thing was, it got one hand loose and it scratched my chest across, and it was trying to get to my son. And I was like, finally I said, Jesus, please help me. And on the foot of the bed there's a window, and I'm on the second floor, and the it's like a portal open. I usually say that like the veil tore, and when he walked through, I didn't know who it was. I had no idea. Like I said, I didn't know who Jesus was, but when he got close, I could see behind him. It was so bright and so beautiful, and I can't explain the colors, but I know now that was heaven. And he came in. The closer he got, I could see his eyes, but I noticed also this thing that was fighting, it stopped. And it was like we were both in shock. Me and this demon are shocked, staring at Jesus coming through the portal. And the whole time I could see his eyes, and his eyes were, it looked like flecks of gold, green, blue, hazel, like a storm, if that makes sense. And he didn't say nothing. He just walked so quietly, so slowly, and he came to my left side, and we didn't break eye contact. I couldn't even say anything. Like I didn't know who he was, and it was he picked this thing up, and I knew it wasn't a dream because when he picked it up, it's like his body moved like he was trying to get it under control. So he was kind of doing this a little, but keeping eye contact with me. And when he pulled it off of me, and he didn't say anything, but he just he turned around and he walked out of the room through the veil. And this thing was screeching the whole time. This shadow man was screeching, and it was fighting to get out of his grip. And the veil, it closed up, like the wall just completely closed. And And I woke up, and that was my first deliverance. That was my first deliverance. That was September and of last year. I bought my first Bible in October ever. And then I just started looking for answers. But the more people that I try to tell, the more pushback I got. Because I was like, I don't what did I just experience? What just happened? And I'm in a I'm off the reservation. I'm in a different, like across the country now, and nobody really understands what's going on with the spiritual world where I'm at. And I got shot down so many times. Like, we don't talk about the enemy, we just talk about Jesus and love. And I'm like, but you need to help me. Like, what just happened to me? You know, I didn't know any deliverance ministries around. I didn't know what that was. I didn't know what deliverance meant. So I started looking online, and thank God that the Lord had put people in my path, because so then I started saying these prayers, and then I got into the habit of saying it like uh every day, just like. And then I was like, but when I first read the prayers, it was like it had words like I had no idea what they were, like Elohim, the most high Elohim. And I was like, what's Proverbs? What is this? What's Psalm 91? What is Matthew 18:18? And then so I started like I was like, because I knew how prayers work in my Native American religion, because it was like when you say prayers, spoken words carry a lot of weight. And so I was like, well, before I even say any prayers, I need to figure out what this means. So I did a lot of research, and I was like, okay, I'm not cursing myself. You sure? Because I'm like, I don't know these people, I don't know what their intentions are. So then I started saying the morning prayer, evening prayer. And then I decided, I told my brother what happened. My brother was fighting with his alcoholism and stuff like that. And so I had him on speakerphone, and I'm speaking these prayers and stuff like that. And paranormal stuff started happening, like 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, stuff slamming against the window. And me and the dogs are just looking at each other like, all right, and just go back to sleep. Stuff moving around in the kitchen, and I'm like, okay. So I contact Vicky again. I'm like, hey, all this stuff is happening. What's going on? She goes, oh, don't even worry about it. They're like little kids just trying to scare you to stop praying. I was like, oh well, I'm gonna pray even more. So I memorized Psalms 23, Psalms 91, and then I really started like, that's what kicked it off. And then my dreams went from like terror, terror, terror. And then it went from switch. Now they're not terror. Now they're night visions. And I was like, then that's when I had the first night vision in November, when I had come face to face with a guy. And it was November 17th of last year. And me and this guy were face to face, and he had a full tattoo face. And I was like, he saw me, I saw him, and he was with a group of guys, but it looked like they turned around and they were at a beach, but they were turning around and walking back inland. And I've been to Hawaii so many times, so I knew it wasn't a Hawaii island, because this beach had pebbles and it had rocks. It was pretty rocky, like white rocks is what I saw on the beach. And then it was like he picked up his spear and he went to turn. And when he turned, his face changed, like it aged, but it had like different faces, just like one after another, just changing. So it was like different faces of elders and on this man. And he walked off. And I woke up, and I had to Google that image because I didn't know what I saw. And come to find out, it was one of the tribes in New Zealand, the Maori. I don't know if I'm
Maoris,
saying
yeah,
it right.
yeah.
Maori. Okay, yeah. Yeah, because excuse me. So I saw, yeah, the design, it matched that area. So I was like, well, that's strange. So, but it was like it wasn't scary. It was just like we could see each other, and that was it. And then it shifted to like where I was taken into this is like later on in November. I was taken to another realm where it was like kind of like in space. It looked like it, but there was like black bears, and there was like it was they had chains, and there was like chariots, and there was like baby cubs. And I woke up and I was like, what? I was like, I don't get it. Like, what is this all about? So it wasn't scary, but they were like so vivid. Like I was feeding these bears like blueberries, and they were trying to eat the blueberries, but these people that were in chariots, they were pulling the bears on the chains to like keep them focused. And it was like old ancient songs that they were singing. And I've never heard this language at all because I had been, like I said, 12 countries. I'm pretty good at like picking out languages and stuff, but I've never heard this. And it sounded Viking, but it sounded really, really, really ancient. And then so I was like, okay, so I wrote that down. And then next thing you know, it's like February comes, um and then I had another night vision where I was taken to there was this thing called Mother, and it looked like a big old huge UFO that was coming to land, and I didn't understand it. Like all I got from that was Mother. And then the dream shifted. Now I'm like going into outer space, and I see like seven little stars, like a cluster of stars, and it looks so pretty. And I was like, that's cool. But then I saw like these little things jumping out. It looked like a meteor shower. The closer we got, it was like they were actual like beings. And it was like they were blue, and they had like their veins were completely gold, and they were all shiny, and they were jumping out, and that's what was causing the meteor shower. And the word I got from it was Pleiades. I was like, what is Pleiades? I was like, okay. So another round change, the dream shifted. And this is all in like one dream, but it was like shifting everyone. And it was like no smooth transition. It was just like one after another. And then the third one was when I had been guided by something protective on the left. And we passed by like three rows of angels. They were all purple with golden wings, and they were all standing there. Let's see, they were standing there worshiping like a golden light, but their hands were so white, like snow. And I was like, okay, so I thought they were statues. So I turned around and I looked, and one of them at the end in the middle, he turned around and he waved and he went like this. And I giggled and I went like that. And then the one behind him turned and looked at me and did a double take and went back to worshiping again. And I'm standing there, and then next thing you know, like it's like a huge stadium, but the whole aura was purple. And this little girl, she comes in front of us. She was so emaciated. Her hair was all chopped up. It was like jet black. Her face was purple. She had a purple gown. There was like dark circles under her eyes. And then she stood in front of me and this person, and she said, I was a prisoner on the Pleiades, but now I'm free. And then everybody started singing. I didn't understand the language again. And they brought her a book, and she opened it. And then I woke up and I didn't understand what that meant. So now that we're in February, then I started diving deep into like what did I just see? So then I came across the book of Job when I read Job 38, where it's about binding Pleiades. Um, and then I started reading Psalms 82, where it's about the Council of Gods, and the late Dr. Michael Heiser explains it and broke it down, and even has like a documentary called The Unseen Realm. So I'm like, okay, so obviously I knew what Council of Gods meant because obviously we have the polytheist gods. So that was easy for me to understand and stuff like that. And then so I was like, but still, and then I read about binding Pleiades and loosing Orion, and then that went into like the actual scripture, and then it talks about like I read a couple verses from different translations, and it says, "Will you bind the sweet influence of deception?" I was like, what? I was like, why are they the sweet influence? And it kept everywhere I read about the Pleiades, it's always about binding Pleiades, binding Pleiades. I'm like, well, obviously, if you don't want something to run around, you want to bind it. So what? Why is the Pleiades so bad? And by this time, I'm looking into New Age because nobody's understanding what I'm going through. So now I'm like, well, maybe I need to go to Reiki. Maybe I need to clean my chakra. Maybe I need to open my third eye is already open, but maybe I need to open my crown even more to get more information. Um, and so I went to Reiki and then I blew out the Wi-Fi there. And then I went to a different Reiki person and the whole fire alarm system went off. And then that's when the a veil came through and a mouth and he was saying no. And I was like, okay, well, maybe I'm not supposed to do this. So I stopped going. And then that's when I started hearing a lot of like new age talk. Like, oh yeah, I'm a Pleiadian star seed, I'm here to like take everybody on a mothership and take everybody to the fifth dimension kind of thing. And I was like, I just had a dream about mother and I just had a dream about Pleiades. And then but everything that I'm reading in the Bible is saying no against all of it. So, and then I go into like Matthew 18:18, what we bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and what we loose on earth will be loose in heaven. And then I keep seeing that word binding, binding, loosing, loosing. And then I come across like, I didn't even the only thing I saw was that Job verse with binding Pleiades and loosing and run. I didn't even go any further. So I went back and I looked and I was like, the Mazaroth. And I was like, what is a Mazaroth? So I looked and it's like a Hebrew word for constellation. And it's leading the bear and its cubs across the constellation. And that's when my night visions clicked. I was like, I saw the bear and the cubs going across the constellations, and I saw the Pleiades being bound. I was like, mind blown, right? So then I was like, so what's so significant about that? Well, in my tribe, one of the secret fraternities that's now extinct is called the Source Followers. They summit the Pleiades. So I was like, well, who else has summoned the Pleiades and why are the Pleiades such a huge deal? So then I did more digging into it. And not only do most of the Native Americans that were the ones that I researched, it's all about the seven sisters, the seven great mountains and stuff like that. And then I go into Greek mythology, and then I read about like how one of the sisters um, had Hermes, and then I go into like Hermetics. And then Hermetics is actually like a three-part is like a three-part god, like three times great. And not only that, but it was like when I started reading more into the Pleiades and how they're known as the sweet influence of deception, um, then I read how John ate the scroll and how it was sweet as honey, but then it was bitter in his belly. And I was like, is that because the bittersweet experience of knowing the raw truth of what these things really were, what we're really summoning into these kivas and stuff like that? Um, so the Greek mythology of Pleiades actually ties in with ancient Egyptians, right? Um, so God obviously made the constellations to look at and not to worship. Same thing that with the crystals and the herbs on the ground. You're not, they're just there for medicinal purposes. You're not supposed to like dry out the sage and like smoke it and invite all these spirits in and stuff like that. You're not supposed to look at the crystals and try to look at astrology and stuff like that. Um, so I'm learning about all this stuff in the Bible. I'm like, oh my God, we're not supposed to do that. We're not supposed to do that. Well, there's a reason why. It's like, so Hermes is the operation in alchemy, which is the sun, and astrology and the stars, and theurgy, which is the little gods. So a blend of Egyptian religion, which is like Thoth, and it goes into like the phoenix, which is like the thunderbird, which is like the my tribe's sigil, and it's mixed in with magic and paganism. And all of this knowledge is from the fallen angels. So talk about being deceived. So Hermes is also known as the trickster. I'm sorry. He is known as the tricksters. And I'm just curious to see like how many tribes have that.
So you believe you were given those dreams to warn you against these forces? Is that right? So why do you,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, because it was like I said, I have been fighting with this for all my life. And when I had gone through 5 deliverances, uh four of them were self-deliverances, and I needed help with the other one, because that's the one that my son, he he saw me with reptilian eyes chasing him around a house with a black cloak. And this was earlier this year. And so when I went home and I needed a deliverance team to help me out, one of them could see in the spirit, and he looked into my eyes and he said, "You've been fighting with something, haven't you?" And he knew. And I was like, "Yeah," because I was not feeling good. I was sick, I was nauseous, I had vertigo. And I said, "Yes." So he said, "Look into my eyes." And then he said, "I see reptilian eyes." And then I started crying because I was like, I didn't tell him what my son saw a few months before. And so he's like, "That's okay, that's okay. We'll take it out. We'll take it out." So but this thing was like chirping in my ear because where we live in New Mexico, there's like a lot of canyons and stuff. So it was telling me to jump off the canyon. It was telling me that I could fly down there. If you just walk off, you're going to fly like how you do in your dreams. Don't worry about it. But during that deliverance, that was the hardest one, because now I understand when they say, I bind you in the name of Jesus," to shut them up. This thing had bound me and shoved me so far down where I couldn't even hear what the guy was saying. He was like a foot away from me praying, and he sounded like he was 20 feet away. I could barely hear him. And this thing took over, and it was so mad. It was it took my physical self to like keep my mouth shut, but all these thoughts were running through my head like, "Shut the F up, shut the F up, you're a liar, just shut up," and like just screaming in my head. And then I'm crying and I'm like heaving and stuff like that. I feel sick, I feel nauseous. And then that's when it went from straight anger to straight lust. It was like, put your arms around him, try to kiss him, make him stop, make him stop. And the whole time I'm crying, and finally he gets, it's like I came back to like my physical self. Um and then he led me through rebuking it. And finally I got it out of my mouth that, I rebuke you in the name of Jesus, and led me through the rest of the prayer. But that was hard. It- the first deliverance, or no, the second deliverance that I went through was during a 3-day water fast, and that was in February. And that's the one where an angel killed a demon, and this demon had like sprayed black goo out of his chest, and this thing looked like Lord of the Rings, the orcs, those nasty things that were born from the ground and stuff. But that's what those, when God had unveiled the Kachina mask, that's what it looked like underneath. Um, so that's why I was like, what are we really praying to? What are we really worshiping? And that was a shocker. And when that angel killed that demon, I woke up that next morning and I'm on day 2 of my water fast. I don't have anything in my system except water, but I threw up black goo in the toilet, and massive vertigo. And um, I was like, there's no reason why I should be throwing up black stuff. So that was a shocker. Not only that, but it felt like something was ripped from inside my belly. Like I could not explain it. It was like deep, deep, deep inside, like towards my spine, but it was like through my belly button. It felt like that, like it did rip out of my body, out of my spirit. Yeah.
That, yeah, that's incredible. You've been through so much, and so I guess now, like, because we've been talking for about an hour and a half, and I know it's late for you. I want to kind of begin to wrap up by asking you this question, and I want to thank you so much for sharing so vulnerably about your life, your story, and your struggles, because I think it's going to really help a lot of people out there. I often ask this question. I think it's particularly good for you to speak to this. What would you say to somebody that is right now in a similar position to the one you were before coming to Christ? Maybe they're Native American. They've had bad experiences with Christians, like a lot of people have. Like you touched on before, that people were forced to convert to Christianity, which is something obviously that is wrong. People should never be forced to convert. And say they're listening to your story and they've tried everything, they're going to medicine man, they're seeking freedom in all of these places. What would you say to them now that you've actually encountered Jesus and you've gone through deliverance? Yeah, can you speak to that situation?
Yeah, because like I said, I grew up with grandparents who have been through boarding school, and the whole the friars and the missionaries that try to do good set people back as far as like the Christians that are really trying to help and the evangelists. Um, don't hold on to your ancestors' hate and anger and hurt because Jesus is not a white man's religion. He's not. He's actually Middle Eastern. He's olive skinned, and there's a picture of an 8-year-old girl that actually painted him because the Jesus that I saw was that painting with the short curly hair. That was exactly what he looked like, and so he's not white. But if you're struggling with sleep paralysis or night terrors or being tormented or dealing with the succubus and incubus and stuff like that, or you're fighting addictions, depression, um, anything like poverty, I just want to let you know that God doesn't want that for us because it does say in the Bible that Jesus is the way, the only way through to God, the Creator, is through Jesus. Um, and if you feel like you're bound in chains, and you're still questioning whether what you're doing is the right thing, I would just urge you, just reach out to God, say, God the creator, it doesn't need to be, you don't have to say Jesus, but God the creator, like, please show me the way, show me what these things that I'm worshiping, show me these things that I'm summoning into the kivas or your tribe and stuff like that, show me the truth. um because he'll answer you, because that's what I truly was seeking for, the truth, and I needed the truth because everything that I tried in my whole life wasn't working. And ever since that I've been delivered and found Jesus, it's like I have never had night terrors. I am completely free. All the chains are broken. I went and I baptized my mom and my brother. um I have ministered to so many people that need help, and but don't hold on to that pain that our ancestors went through, because once you forgive, what you're doing when you forgive is that you're giving all that hurt and pain to God, and He deals with it. Just, I want you to be free. I want you to break those chains, because if I can't even tell you, like, the peace that I have, and I'm not afraid of the dark anymore. I'm not afraid to sleep with the light on anymore. It's like a clarity. Um, and you don't have to be afraid of the night. You don't have to be afraid of these things, because with the sound of the name of Jesus, they do scurry. They're terrified and they fly away. And I've seen it firsthand when I was doing prayers for cleansing the land and stuff like that. As soon as I start praying and I say the name of Jesus, and it's like they're gone. They're done. They don't want nothing to do with you. So I don't want you to be terrified. There's nothing to be terrified of, because Jesus will definitely protect you, because He loves us all. We're all of His children.
Amen. Yeah, I completely agree. Like Jesus Christ is real. You've experienced him. I've
Hmm.
experienced him. He's alive and active today. And he really did live a life here on earth, and he died and he rose again. And he actually defeated death and he defeated the devil. And he has power over these things. And that's why medicine doctors can't help you, but Jesus can.
Hmm.
And I love that you said that. Jesus isn't a white man. I know like Christianity is associated with Europe, but it started with a lot of brown people. Yeah, Jesus is not a white man, and he bids everybody to come to him to repent of their sins and to place their faith in him. And so, Steph, I think that's a really good place to end. I just want to thank you so much for sharing your story. Um, this felt like a really special podcast, and you and I we experienced a lot of technical difficulties as we went through this, which has never really happened to me before, and I found that pretty strange. But I want to thank you so much for bearing with me through the technical difficulties and everything like that. And I know it's like probably like 1:30 in the morning for you right now, so I'm just so grateful for your time, sister. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. What I'm going to do now, everybody, is I'm going to link all of Steph's links in the description box below so you can check that out. And hey, if you've made it this far, perhaps you'll consider liking, subscribing, sharing, all that kind of stuff. I know it's a bit annoying when people ask you to do that, but it really does help get the message out to so many more people. So if you're willing, we'd really appreciate that. All right, Steph, I'm going to end the recording there, but thanks again so much for coming on.
Okay, thank you so much.